Excellent. So it seems we're ready. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. I thought this was going to be the first session of the day, but apparently this is an early morning event, so I saw the previous session as well, so that was great. So thanks for joining today. Today we're going to talk about custom data integration and analysis in Excel using Office add-ins. So the focus of this session is about Office add-ins and how to use them specifically in Excel to do better data insights and analysis. So my name is Rolando Jimenez. I'm a program manager on the Office extensibility team. So my team is a shared team within the Office organization, and we own the developer platform for Office. All the extensibility technologies from the old BBA from the 90s all the way to the newest stuff that we're doing on Office 365 on the cloud. That's my team. So today I'm going to do an overview of Office add-ins, which is a new generation of extensibility that we built for this new era of cloud and devices. We're going to do a little bit of data analysis in Excel with Office add-ins that are already created by someone else. And we're going to do a little deep dive into how do you create these Office add-ins. So we're going to do a little bit of development, do some code, and then we're going to talk about what are the next steps once you know all this information, where do you go from here. So we are a smaller audience, so feel free to raise your hand if you have questions. I think I can take a few questions. I will be watching the time, but it seems we can do that. So let's start with the overview. I want to basically just do a level set on Office add-ins and in general the strategy for Office 365 extensibility. So let me ask you a question. How many of you are already familiar with Office add-ins, the new web Office add-ins? Okay, so quite a few of you are already there. So I'll try to go fast on this first part. So no doubt, Office 365 is very strategic for us as a company, and in particular as a development platform. So we've been going through this technology journey within Office, where in the 90s, Office was a desktop suite of like literally just 4 products, Outlook, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And we have been evolving this suite to do more and more as the technology allows us to. So in the 2000s, we went into the era of client and servers, and we introduced a lot of server technology that allow you to do powerful stuff like collaboration around documents, real-time conferencing with Link, obviously email, and all those cool technologies. And now we are in these devices and cloud era. And we are definitely betting big on Office 365 to be this new platform that you can use to do everything that you used to do before around collaboration and productivity in Office, but now across all devices, all types of devices, and based on the cloud. So your data travels with you. The cloud and the devices are kind of two sides of the same coin, right? Like your device is how you consume cloud content. If you don't have cloud content, your device becomes really boring and not very useful. And at the same time, if you have stuff in the cloud, but you cannot consume it everywhere you are, the cloud doesn't make sense. So cloud and devices are really just these inseparable parts that go hand in hand. So for us, from a development platform perspective, Office 365 presents like an amazing opportunity, not only to enable users to be more productive, but also to build custom solutions on top of it to even boost the productivity more. So you can see some numbers here. These are some mind-blowing numbers around how many hours a day people are spending in Office products. I'm pretty sure that in this audience in particular, 2 to 3 hours a day is probably on the low end. You probably spend much more time in Excel. There's a ton of data being stored in the cloud, and all this data is there and available to build custom solutions on top of that. And that's why it is really important for us to create a platform a new generation of a development platform that allows us to really tap onto all this data that is in the cloud and make it available in all these devices. So from a developer perspective, the way we look at this is there's two big pillars for us. There is what we call enabling users to do more inside the Office client applications, and that is what we have on the left-hand side with Office add-ins. This is basically about you're already an Office user, you're in Excel, Word, PowerPoint, etc., and you want to integrate with some other business process that's happening in your organization and in your life. And the way we want to do this is by bringing custom functionality inside Office. We're trying to boost productivity by minimizing the context switching. Context switching is very expensive. Every time you need to go from Excel, where you are being productive and doing a lot of data, and then go to this CRM system, log in, remember the password, copy paste, spend 20 minutes formatting the data that you copy pasted, that's just loss of productivity. So add-ins are just about, why don't we eliminate all those context switches and bring the custom functionality, the custom integration into other services right within Excel, right within Word and the other Office applications. Now the other pillar is a little bit of the complementary side for this. What if you're not an Office user already? What if you are using other applications? You are on your iPad or on your Android device or in your Windows device, and you are using a different application. But a lot of the data that you want to integrate with is in Office 365. You have your calendar, you have your contacts, you have your documents there, but you're using this mobile application that's been optimized for your sales scenario. This is where the Office 365 APIs come into picture. Office 365 APIs allows us to basically expose all the data and the services that we have in the Office 365 cloud as a set of consumable endpoints that any application from around the world, from any device, from the web or from a phone or tablet, can use to connect and read and write data from Office 365. So this enables another set of very powerful scenarios where I can be outside of an Office client, but still getting full access to all the information that is available in my Office 365. So with these two, we think we can create a really compelling and complete development platform. And you don't need to choose. You actually can combine these two. You will see, for example, that you can create an Office add-in that also connects to Office 365 APIs to read your email, to read your documents, or to start a conference via link. So today, we're going to focus on the Office add-ins part. And I want to do a quick overview to just showcase where we are today, what is possible across Office. And then we're going to start diving a little bit more into Excel specific. So let's do a quick demo of Office add-ins for those of you that haven't seen them. So I'm going to start with Word. And Office add-ins run in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. We are constantly looking for new applications to also enable these new web Office add-ins. This is the third generation of Office add-ins. We used to have COM add-ins, then we had VSTO or .NET add-ins, and this is the new generation of web add-ins. And the key traits of this new generation is they are designed to be cross-device. This is the first set of add-in technology that can run across devices, not only on the desktop, but also on tablets and also on the web. So we're going to take a look at that. We also wanted to simplify the way user acquires these add-ins. Before, in order to install an add-in, you really needed to know where to find it, who is the vendor, and how to install it. But in the world of app stores, that is no longer a good bar to maintain. So what we have done is that we integrated an entry point right within Office for users to be able to find add-ins. There's a tab here in the Insert ribbon. So literally, you come and insert your add-ins. There's obviously a store experience that I can use to find new add-ins that I don't have. I can also have my own collection of add-ins in this My Add-ins tab. And the third possibility is that my organization can also internally deploy add-ins for me in a private way. So if I go to this My Organization tab, I will see some add-ins that have been deployed to me just for my organization. In this case, let me show you how easy it is to go and find or get a new add-in. And this is one of the values of the this new generation of web add-ins. It's really easy to get them. So for this demo, I want to do something around photos. So I want to find photos on the web, but that are legally cleared. I don't want to be pirating anyone's images. I want to get something that I can actually use. And there's this Pickit add-in that allows me to do that. They provide me some legally cleared pictures that I can use for free, and they also have some business model where I can pay for the pictures I want. So all I need to do is select that add-in and then see some details. If I trust this vendor, the add-in is going to be instantly installed. So as you see, just a couple seconds and the add-in is already loaded. It extended my Office interface, so you can see new buttons were added to my ribbon in this case. And I can just click that button, and the add-in is going to launch. Now, one of the nice things about add-ins is that they're not just installed on this machine. They are actually associated with my account. So in this case, I'm logging as me with my live account. So because I installed this add-in, if I go to another machine and log in with the same account, or to the Office 365 web interfaces and log in with that account, those add-ins will now be available in the My Add-ins section for me. So in this case, you can see there are some images, and I can insert, for example, one of the images here. I want to show you something a little bit more interesting. In addition to basically being there on the ribbon, add-ins can start also integrating into some very interesting ways. For example, in this case, this add-in allows me to select some text in my document, and I can right-click that text, and they added this custom entry point that allows me to find suggested images for that text. So in this case, I can click that, and then the add-in is going to grab that text that I selected, identify some key keywords like powerful and video. That's what they picked up from the text that I selected, and then give me images that could be representative of that. So you can start seeing how this is, instead of switching to the browser, finding an image on the web, copy, pasting, maybe the size is not right, I can just come here and click the image that I want, say insert, and it's going to give me the high-resolution image in the right size for my document. So the add-in is already doing a lot of this hard work for me. Let me just quickly show you some other add-ins in other applications, and then we're going to come to Excel, where I want to spend most of the time, obviously, because I think that's going to be the most interesting for this audience. So add-ins work in Outlook as well. So I just want to show you very quickly a couple of very easy demos. In Outlook, for example, I have this Evernote add-in. Whenever I receive an email, I already install it, I can just click Evernote. And I can, I'm already logged in on this machine, so I didn't even have to log in. I have access to my Evernote notebooks, and I can just say, hey, I want to save these to that demo notebook. And just like that, with a couple of clicks, boom, my email is in Evernote. And then later on, if I want to create a new email and I want to reuse that piece of content, I can also come here, launch Evernote in my Compose email experience, and do the reverse. Now, the add-in in this case is showing me all the content that I have clipped recently, and I can say, oh, I want to share this one with some people, so I can just with a couple of clicks get it back into Outlook. Again, no context switching. I didn't have to go to Evernote, log in over there, copy, paste, and do all the formatting. So pretty cool. Now, I want to show you an add-in in PowerPoint that I think will start resonating a little bit more with the theme of data insights. So how can we use add-ins to make better use of the data, integrate data that we may have in Power BI or in Azure, ML, Cloud, and Experiments, and bring that into the context of our Office clients. So in this case, I want to show you an add-in that was created by some third-party company for PowerPoint. And what this add-in allows me to do is bring data from Power BI. So I'm going to go here to the store and find this add-in, I think it's called Power BI. Yeah, Power BI Tiles by DevScope. I'm going to trust it. And this is going to insert this add-in in my document here. In this case, I'm going to say, I want to get data from Power BI. It's going to log me in with my credentials. Since I already logged in the browser, it already caught up my credentials. I have access to all the dashboards right here in PowerPoint that I've been creating or have been shared with me in Power BI. Have a couple of the sample dashboards. And what I can do here is very easily in PowerPoint create and bring the data that I want to put in my presentation right from within this add-in. So in this case, I can browse through the different tiles that I have on that dashboard and then just project that real-time data in my presentation. So very easily, I don't need again to go outside to Power BI to bring the data. So question there. The question is, does this exist in Word? I think this particular add-in is only available for PowerPoint. But I mean, there's no reason why someone could not create something similar for Word. And we're going to see in the development section how we can actually do something like that. So, all right. So now let's go to Excel and then start getting into like data analysis scenarios. So for this, I want to show you a few add-ins that really allow you to integrate data into Excel and start doing some interesting data analysis. And then we're going to switch on how do you go and create those types of add-ins. So I'd like to ask you, how many of you are familiar with Azure Machine Learning? Okay, so half the audience. Thank you. So I want to show an add-in that was created by the Azure Machine Learning team to integrate with Excel. So for some of us that we are not data scientists, Azure Machine Learning can be a little bit of an intimidating technology. There's all these concepts that you need to know, and there's a lot of complexity happening on the engine. But the fact that this team created an Excel add-in that brings that into Excel makes it so much more consumable from an end user perspective. So I want to show a couple of scenarios where I'm going to use that add-in plus some other add-ins to put together a data analysis scenario. So in this case, I'm going to start with inserting the Azure Machine Learning in a blank spreadsheet. And in this case, it's, again, one of those new web add-ins that I can easily get from the store. In a blank worksheet, I get a couple of interesting things. They give me a couple of samples. Basically, these are sample connections to web services that are exposing prediction models in Azure Machine Learning Cloud that I can use just to get started. But I can also use my own web service if I created my own model there. So just for a quick overview, let's take a look at how those samples work. So they give you two samples in this case, a Titanic survivor predictor that allows you to, based on the gender and age and the cabin location, get a score of how likely are you to survive the Titanic wreck. So that's an interesting one. If you expand that one, you can see the schema, what type of information they need, like a passenger class, fare price, etc. And the output is going to be a set of scores. They also included, out of the box, this other sample, which is a text sentiment analysis. I saw this was shown in the previous section. I'm going to show it again here just quickly to just demonstrate what comes out of the box very easily. So this text sentiment analysis allows me to get a collection of Twitter-like sentences and then have an analysis of the sentiment of those sentences. So let's go how that works with the add-in. And again, I don't have to go out of Excel to do all these. I can do all these right here. So in most cases, they give you some sample data with this. In this case, if I insert sample data for this Twitter, it's not very helpful. They just give me kind of the schema that I need to follow, but they actually don't give me a lot of sample data. But that's OK. I already populated a spreadsheet with some tweets that I gather from our Office developer account. And then I want to see what's the sentiment of those tweets. So very easy, I can just come here and select the data that I want to analyze. Say, OK, that's my data set. And then where do I want to put this data? So let's put it in C1, which is this cell right here. I'm going to acknowledge that this is going to override any values that are already there. And then all I need to do is click Predict. This is going to gather the data from the Excel spreadsheet, send it to the web service that's going to make the prediction, and come back with the results. So you can see it's a little bit blurry, but I mean, it's pretty accurate in terms of just catching the general sentiment. Obviously, there's some sentences where sarcasm is not picked up exactly and things like that, and you get some funky results. But for the most part, I mean, you can start getting an idea of how this data is looking in terms of sentiment. And obviously, I can start using Excel to do things like conditional formatting. And I also have this column that basically gives me an overall negative, positive, or neutral assessment for the score. Now, Excel doesn't really provide a great way to visualize a column of data like that, or at least there's not a lot of variety. If I come to the insert charts and say, hey, what is the chart that recommends me for that data? Because it's just a set of values that repeat themselves, there's not a lot of options. What if I wanted to visualize this data in a more interesting way? So this is, again, where add-ins can also help me. Not only I can bring data from a very intelligent service like Azure Machine Learning, but I can also start visualizing data in fun and interesting ways. In this case, this is an add-in that I created some time ago. I called it Bubbles. Bubbles is like a fun way to visualize your data. Hopefully the title is self-explanatory, what it does. But basically what I can do here is I can select some data, in this case that column of negative positives, and then just say, hey, why don't you put that into proportionally sized bubbles that allow me to see, hey, is it more positive, neutral, or negative? And then have a custom visualization. This is a simple example, but then you can imagine how with add-ins you can also go crazy and create very complex visualizations that allow you to drill down into your data in very interesting ways, depending on the domain. We've talked to some partners that, for example, they wanted to do some specific visualizations for drilling oil and being able to map those on a map and have some data from Excel powering that visualization. So, and all those scenarios are possible because of add-ins. Now, let me show you another example. I'm going to switch to another example of Azure ML. But before that, I want to just show you something really interesting. So there's this, Azure Machine Learning is now part of the Cortana Analytics suite. It's one of the services that it's available with that suite. And with it, there's a gallery called the Cortana Analytics Gallery. And the reason this is very interesting is because there's a bunch of models created by Microsoft. But also, there's an experiments section there, which is really a community-driven repository of models of all sorts of domains that you can find there to start exploring with different data. So you can see there's a fraud detection, there's credit, there's movie recommendations, there's email classification. There's a bunch of models that are there that you can go and use to explore your different data sets. And you can actually basically open them in your own workspace in ML Studio and then change them or add more data, train them in a different way, all sorts of very cool things. So for my next demo, I just want to show how you can go to Cortana Analytics experiments and then choose one. In this case, I want to choose the movie recommender model. And I can say, I want to open this in Studio. So by doing that, that's basically going to ask me for sign in. I'm going to sign in with my account. And it's going to take that experiment in the repository and basically create a copy on my own workspace account and open it for me. In this case, I click cancel because I already had one copy that I created before. In the first time that you copy a model, you need to run it, you need to train it, and you need to do a bunch of steps to expose it at a web service. I'm not going to go deep into all those steps because there's other sessions that are covering that. But all I want to show you here is I have this experiment. I can see the model behind it. I also exposed it as a web service. So I can go to my web services here and see there is a movie recommendation prediction web service. And in the definition of that web service, they give me already a couple of Excel files that are ready to use this model. So I'm going to click on that Excel workbook that it's part of the web service definition. And I'm going to open it in Excel. In this case, I just need to do a quick unblocking. In my machine, there's a policy that blocks files that come from the internet. So I unblock it so that I can open it in Excel. So as you can see, I opened that Excel file, and it already comes with the machine learning add-in in it and pre-configured to connect to that movie recommendation web service. So you can see here's the recommender. I can open it. And then let's see how I can use that model that it's going to recommend movies from a database of a lot of users that did ratings on the IMDb database. They have all that data. And based on that, they are going to tell you what is the set of movies that a particular user is going to like based on their history of ratings for other movies. So in this case, let me use the sample data. So you can see they give me some sample data. There's a timestamp, there's a rating, there's a movie ID, and there's a user ID. And that's all I need to provide them for the input. Now, this is not a lot of data. What if I wanted to play and understand the model better and see how well it does the prediction, and I want to bring more data? So I want to show you another add-in that I like a lot. It's a very simple but useful add-in, which is called the random generator. I got this one from the store as well. So I'm just going to open that random generator. And as you can tell, this is going to allow me to generate random data. So let's just do that. So I need a timestamp. So let's order these timestamp from recent to older to get the range of timestamps that are available. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to generate a bunch more data. Obviously, I could generate much more than this. But for this example, I'm just going to say, hey, give me values from this number to this number, which I know it's going to be a valid range. I really don't care about the time in this case. I'm going to select the place where I want to put this value and say generate. And this is going to automatically generate me some random numbers, which is very useful if I'm just trying to understand how the model works. And I can do the same for other columns. So in this case, there is a rating, and let's generate some random ratings for this The movies, the movie IDs, I know there's like around 800,000 movies. So I'm just going to randomly rate some movies on that range. And for the user IDs, let's just say I have 4 users that I want to create predictions for. So very easy. Again, another add-in that is saving me time. Add-ins are all about like being productive, helping you in your data flow for the scenario. So I already generated a bunch of random data. Now I can come here and use the predictions. So I'm going to select all this data and say, okay, that's the data set that I want to use. And then I want to put the results in F1 and say predict. And again, this is going to send the data to Azure Machine Learning Cloud and get me some results. So in this case, you can see what are the movies that user 1 and user 2 are likely to like. Seems like The Godfather is total 10 for user 1, which is great. World C seems strange there. I don't know. But I mean, that's what the prediction model is doing. But you can see, like, I'm using add-ins to create a end-to-end flow, a workflow, and saving me a lot of time on all these data management steps. Great. So let me go back to my presentation. And we saw what can you do with add-ins. Now, how do you create these add-ins? So I want to ask you, how many of you are developers? Okay, great. So we're going to do a quick demo of how to create one of these add-ins from scratch. So before I go into the development, let's just establish some basic concepts about add-ins. So what is an add-in from a developer perspective? It's a very simple concept. It's just a web app. Literally, any web app can be turned into an add-in. All you need is something that is hosted on a web server and that can render HTML and do some JavaScript. If you know how to create an HTML page with some basic JavaScript, you pretty much can do an add-in. The only other piece that you need to make that web page an add-in is a manifest. And a manifest is a very simple XML description of how that web page is going to appear inside Office. If it's going to appear as a task pane, as we saw in some cases, or as a visualization inside the spreadsheet. Is it going to add buttons to the ribbon or not? That's all the information that goes in the manifest. And then you just put those together, and then you have an add-in. So let's go ahead and create one. So I'm going to fire Visual Studio here. Let me just close these Excels. So I'm going to fire Visual Studio. And I'm going to show you how easy Visual Studio makes the add-in creation process. So I'm just going to go and say New Project. By the way, in this demo, I'm using Visual Studio, but you don't need to use Visual Studio. Add-ins are one of the values and the big bets of our team is that we are making add-ins all based on standard web technologies. So you can really use any tool that you like to create the add-in. All you need is an HTML editor and some JavaScript skills, and that's it. I could do this even in Notepad if I wanted. Obviously, in this case, I just want to do the tool that it's going to make a lot of the steps easier for me. So let's call this my Wolfram Alpha demo. And I'm going to click OK. It's going to be an Excel add-in. I'm choosing that template. And this is going to ask me what type of add-in I want. In Excel, there's 2 types. There's a visualization, like the bubbles one that we saw. And then there's just adding functionality to Excel in the form of a task pane or through the ribbons. In this case, I'm going to say, let's add some functionality to Excel. So while this creates the standard template, let's take a look at the scenario that we want to enable. So I'm going to use, I want to connect to Wolfram Alpha. How many of you are familiar with Wolfram Alpha? Just a few, okay. So Wolfram Alpha is this, they call it a computational knowledge engine. Is this web service that it's available for free for consumers, and they have a business model for enterprises. But basically, they have an engine that can make a lot of calculations, intelligent calculations based on mathematic models on very big and interesting data sets. So they have all sorts of data, from mathematical equations to census data to like data from different industries like automotive and healthcare, etc. And you can come here and ask natural language questions to get results. Like, for example, I can say, hey, what is the GDP of Washington State? And I click enter. And then they're going to give me a result. Come on. Okay. And I can do, like, you can see, here's the result. I have a typo, that's why it took Washington's. So it's gonna give me some information about the GDP in Washington State. I can ask all sorts of natural language things like, hey, weather in Tokyo, for example. Just do that and they're gonna give me some information. So it's really powerful. I mean, I can really gather some data. Now, the thing is that they present it here, but it's really hard if I have a bunch of data in my Excel spreadsheet to get this data and put it into Excel. I mean, it's actually quite a bit of work. So the add-in that we're gonna create in the next 5 to 10 minutes is an add-in that allows me to leverage this very powerful knowledge engine, Wolfram Alpha, and integrate it right within Excel. So let's go back to Visual Studio, and I just click on the new project. This is just the standard out-of-the-box content that I get. And I'm gonna just click Run to show you what Visual Studio gives you out of the box. So in this case, it's going to launch Excel. And it's going to have this button here that allows me to launch the add-in. And this is a very sample boilerplate project that just kind of showcases some basic functionality. All it does is allows me to select some numbers, click highlight, and highlight something, just to get you started with some of the basics of developing add-ins. Now, if you see what was generated, there's a bunch of folders. There's really just like a supporting collateral here. I really don't need all these. They give me icons if I want to make it look pretty. They give me some styles for CSS if I want to do my content. The really important files that you care about is this home HTML, which is the main file for your interface. And this is just like a general HTML page. The only difference between a standard HTML page and an add-in one is this line here that basically is including our Office JavaScript library that allows you to get access to the APIs that allow you to interact with Excel in this case. The rest is just standard JavaScript HTML. I'm using some of the popular frameworks like jQuery. I can use any framework I want because it's just the web. I mean, there's popular frameworks out there like Angular or for data grabbing. I can use any of those from the community. And then here is my user interface. So that is one important file. Obviously, there's a JavaScript file that it's behind that HTML that has all the logic. And then there's also this manifest file. And I'm going to show you the manifest file that we saw in the diagram. This is an XML file that describes how the add-in integrates into Office. So some of the important thing here is the source location. You can see the source location is pointing to HTML. There's this remote app URL, which Visual Studio is going to replace with the actual location where I publish this add-in. In this case, since I'm debugging, it's going to be my local host machine. That's what happened when I click F5. And that's it. Those are the important files that we need to know about. So now, how do I connect with Wolfram Alpha from here? I already have an add-in that can display inside Excel. All I need to do is create some interface for my Wolfram Alpha connection. So I'm going to replace the boilerplate body of this add-in. And put some content of my own. And again, nothing super complicated here. I just have this user interface. You can see there's a couple of input boxes to capture a column name, a query that I want to send to Wolfram Alpha, and a source column, which is going to be the data in my Excel spreadsheet that I want to use to gather some information from Wolfram Alpha. And that's it, and I have a button to trigger the action. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of JavaScript. So I'm going to just basically get rid of all the boilerplate JavaScript, start with a blank home.js, and add some code there. Now, we don't have a lot of time to go into details of this code, but it's not a lot of code. I inserted, let's see, how many lines of code I just did. It's about 184 lines of code. So, I mean, some code, but not huge. In comparison, the boilerplate text that I just deleted was around 130. So, I mean, it's not super complicated. It's going to connect to a web service that exposes Wolfram Alpha as an engine, as a web service. And then it's going to do some initialization of the UI. And then here it's going to start using the Office APIs that are exposed to that JavaScript. So you can see I'm using office.context.document that allows me to get access to the spreadsheet. And from there, I'm going to call this bindings API that allows me to gather the data from a table within Excel. And I mean, the rest of the code is just like that. The other interesting piece here is the piece where I'm connecting to the service. So there's a function here that allows me to get the values from Wolfram Alpha. And that is basically just connecting and doing an HTTP post to the service that is exposing Wolfram Alpha. With my query, you can see I'm passing the source column, the query that I'm going to capture from the end user, and then it's going to use the Office JavaScript API to process the data that results. And in this case, I'm using, again, Office APIs here to set the data in the Excel spreadsheet. So that's just a very quick overview of how that works. Now let's see if I got the results I wanted. So for that, I'm going to need also some data. And let me gather some data. So in this case, let's say I'm in, see if that works. Yeah. I'm doing some analysis about states. I want to move to a state, and I want to understand a little bit more of that state. So I have the list of states in the US here, and I want to start gathering data from Wolfram Alpha about those states. And I can gather all sorts of interesting data. So the first thing I'm going to do is click a table. This is the UI that we just created. And then I'm going to start saying, hey, I want to create a new column called GDP. And the query for that is going to be, give me the GDP of whatever is in the state column, right? And I'm going to click add. Now, that is going to start reading the data, connecting to Wolfram Alpha, and automatically bringing that data for me. So click a button, and I can have that data in my Excel spreadsheet. And I can do all sorts of queries, like, I mean, more obscure queries, like, hey, I want to see what level of education is in the city. So let's add a new column for education and say population with bachelor in state. And then I'm going to add another column for that. Let's see what happens. So it's going to start adding the number of people that have a bachelor degree on that particular state. And then you can see now how you, with an add-in, you marry two things. You marry Excel, which is a grid that allows you to do a lot of data analysis and munging, with a very powerful engine that can answer all sorts of questions and put them together in a way that is really, really productive from an end user. So I hope you guys like this demo. This really illustrates for me what add-ins are all about. Add-ins are connecting Office clients with services that add value to the already productive Office interface. Now, I just want to show you another cool thing, and I'm going to switch to this other device. Can I switch to? So add-ins not only work on the desktop and on the web, they also work on devices. So very quickly, I want to show you, I'm on my iPad now, and I can load this add-in that we just created. I actually preloaded it on this add-in as well, on this iPad as well. So I'm going to open in here the same spreadsheet I have with states, and then here I can come insert, add-in. Now on my iPad, where I don't have a keyboard and all that, I can still start doing some interesting data analysis. Oh, wait a second. Obviously, I need to connect to the network first. Let's see, where is that? Demo Wi-Fi. Okay, so you'll all see the password. That's okay. All right. So there we go. Let's try that again. There we go. So that's the same add-in that we just created. And again, I'm going to just click the, I need to select the table. There it is. I'm going to click the Add Column button. And same functionality on my iPad. Same code base because it's all HTML, JavaScript. I don't have to create a different version for desktop or Excel Online or my iPad. The same add-in works across all these devices. So, and then just showcases also the value of this new generation of add-ins which are available across all these devices. So if we can switch back to the all right, so we have a couple minutes. We started a little bit late, so I'm going to take 2 extra minutes here to just wrap up. So I just wanted to wrap up saying, how do you, if you create an add-in, how do you make it available to your end users or to your audience? There's 2 main ways. As a developer, you did what I did in Visual Studio, create your HTML add-in and publish it to some web server just as a regular web app. Now, the other step that you need to do is that manifest needs to go to a catalog that the Office clients can connect to. And there's 2 main catalogs. One is the global Office store. Every Office user around the world has access to the store. So you can publish your manifest to the store and make it available worldwide. Or you can also, within your enterprise, your admin can set up a corporate catalog, and you can deploy that manifest to that corporate catalog and make that available only to those users. So it's actually really easy. That's all it is. And then the life cycle and updates happen just as you would do with any web app. If you want to update your HTML, JavaScript, just go to your web server, publish a new version, and boom, automatically all the users have the newest version of your code. So with that, I want to wrap up in terms of next steps suggested. If you are interested in add-ins from an end-user perspective, you can go to the store and see there's a bunch of cool add-ins to connect to Power BI, the Azure Machine Learning one, and there's a bunch of other add-ins for Excel. There's a Solver one that does statistical analysis on models in spreadsheets. If you're interested in developing add-ins, visit dev.office.com. That is the one-stop destination you need to learn more about how to develop add-ins and the latest and greatest features that we are publishing out there. And then obviously there's a bunch of community support. We'll have this slide available for you to access, but we have Channel 9 shows that are showing all the time different best practices and techniques. User voice, please use user voice for add-ins or for data insights. This is something that all teams in Microsoft are using now to really gather what is important for customers and partners, and we really pay attention to that. So last thing, I was asked to remind you that go to the Ask the Experts area if you want to learn more about these or any other topics in the conference. And apparently there's also a focus group that you can register and attend. So outside the Grand Ballroom, you can contact Sophia and get access to those focus groups. So With that, thank you very much. I hope you liked the session, and please give us feedback. Yes, sorry about that. If there's questions, yeah, absolutely.
Are these apps, I developed VBA apps, so this is frustrating to me because I don't really get it. I don't really follow how I'm supposed to get started doing this. I'm not an HTML web developer myself. So are these apps going to work if you're offline? I mean, it didn't for you, so you can explain.
Yes, so the question is if these apps are going to work if they're offline. Technically, you can create an add-in, a web add-in that works offline. Like for example, that bubbles visualization, that one doesn't really need to connect to any service or the network. It's just once you download it into your machine, the HTML and JavaScript, all it needs is the data in your Excel spreadsheet. In reality or in practice, I expect most of the interesting add-ins that are going to really provide value are the ones that are going to connect to some service. So if you ask me, I would say, yeah, technically possible to make it work online. If you want to connect to some external service, you probably are going to require a connection of some sort. Hope that answers. Another question?
Real quick, does it work on a phone? You mentioned the tablet, but what about on a phone?
So the question is if add-ins work on a phone. Currently, we don't yet have support for add-ins on the phone. We will be working on that at some point, but probably it's going to take us some time to get there. We're trying to make add-ins available on all the different platforms. We are starting with desktop, web, Mac is coming. Then we're going to the tablets, iOS, Android, Universal, and then our last step is going to be the phone. So yes, it's in the radar. It's probably going to take us some time.
Just to follow up, if you build an Excel spreadsheet on your desktop and put an add-in in it, and then look at that on a phone, will the functionality be in the spreadsheet?
So what will happen if you open an add-in in desktop and then save it and open it in the phone? What's going to happen is the add-in is not going to open on the phone, but you will still have your data. So basically, you won't see the visualization, will just show as a static image, or if it was a task pane, you won't see the task pane. There was another question here. Yeah.
If your add-in requires some back-end library, such as the Intel Math Kernel library, will it support it? And if it does the MKL run on the user's computer, or does it run on the web server?
That's a good question. So the question is, if you require a particular library, can the add-in use it, and is it going to run on the client or on the server? So because add-ins are created with web technologies, the only type of code that can run client-side is JavaScript inside the browser context. Now, if you want to access like .NET code, you can always host that code on a server, and on the server you can do basically whatever you want. Execute that code, expose it as a service, and consume it from within your HTML and JavaScript. That's pretty much the pattern that we see, not only for add-ins, but in general web development. You put all your heavy lifting logic on the server, and more of the UI and the light business rules on the client side.
That's an interesting different shifted model, and so then all the data would then have to be taken from the spreadsheet, put into the cloud for the math to be done and brought back to the spreadsheet. Or the data has to exist in the cloud to be integrated.
That's right, yeah. There's also scenarios where you can do server to server, like for example, if there's a lot of data, you can first make sure that that data is available in the cloud in some form, like store it in OneDrive in an Excel spreadsheet. And then you can have, via the other side of the house, which is the APIs, you can actually get server-to-server access to the data as well. Question there? So the question is, can you develop user-defined functions with this new web add-in technology? Currently, no, unfortunately. We know this is a great pain for a lot of Excel users. Obviously, user-defined functions are still supported on the desktop with VBA or with native code. That's not going away by any means. We are thinking and considering adding UDF support using this type of technology so that it becomes ubiquitous and you can use UDFs on the iPad and Excel Online. I hope we can get to that this year because, I mean, it's very frequently requested, especially by Excel community. Yeah.
Would you recommend using add-ins as an avenue to create kind of a user forum type thing since InfoPath's kind of gone away?
Mm-hmm.
Is this kind of the avenue that you would say to go, or is there another, if you wanted to, because obviously if you're creating a web app, essentially you could use that for data entry.
Yeah. So the question is, for data entry, do you recommend using add-ins? Yes, I do. I think add-ins are a great technology specifically for data entry scenarios. So you can create your custom form using HTML and then either present that inside Excel for data entry into a spreadsheet, or you can also create just your own web app and use the Office 365 APIs to put that data into a spreadsheet on the cloud. Another question? Yeah.
One more question. So when you model data in Excel, you know, with, for Power BI, that's a sort of SAS tab or
Mm-hmm.
place inside the spreadsheet. Can any of the pivot formulas query that?
I think that's, so the question is if the pivot formulas, the cube formulas can query the data that you bring from Power BI. Is that the question? To be honest, I don't know the answer to that question, but I can help you follow up. Yeah. Another question? All right, well, thank you everyone, and hope you take a look at add-ins in the future.